What's up, guys? It's Vic here with Strikers Reptiles, just chilling on the couch after a day at work. We got our dwarf bunny Theo chilling in the background here, and I just wanted to make a video on a subject that I've seen come up as long as I've been into reptiles. It's been a hot and heavy debate, just a subject that some people will never agree on. The purpose of this video is not to make people agree with me, but just to point out where I stand on it, and maybe if there are some new keepers out there that are forming their opinions, they'll see this and sort of hopefully see the light. I don't know. This is just sort of an opinion piece on why I feed pre-killed and frozen thawed prey almost exclusively when it comes to my reptile collection. I don't use or believe in permanent live feeding. So obviously one of the main reasons that comes up when it comes to live versus pre-killed foods for reptiles is necessity. There are a lot of people out there who say and believe, and are sometimes right when they say and believe, that their snakes or reptiles will only eat rodents if they're live. So, that can be for a variety of reasons. Maybe the person that bred them or their first owner was only feeding them live prey and now they're long into adulthood. Or maybe they're an imported animal that's, always had to hunt and eat live food and they don't accept the frozen thawed or pre-killed food. So there are some distinctions, though. When it comes to monitor lizards, I find that the amount of times that live feeding is actually necessary is almost never. When a monitor is kept correctly, they're properly heated, hydrated, proper mental stimulation and enclosure, you're going to have no issue feeding them dead, pre-killed or frozen thawed rodents. My Savannah monitor is wild caught, like almost all of them are, and she has never eaten a live rodent. She never will. There are basically no good reasons in my book to feed a monitor with live prey. Now, with snakes, especially ball pythons, it can get a bit trickier, especially when you deal with African imports and even just captive bred ball pythons that have been raised on live prey for their entire lives. That being said, even with our 6-year-old ball python who was kept on live prey for her entire life, we were actually able to switch her over to frozen thawed with enough persistence. Almost all of our ball pythons have actually been started on live food, and through our persistence and technique, we're actually switched over. So when it comes to necessity, we don't see a ton of it. With our other snakes like hognose and our boas, those have had no issue switching over to frozen thawed or pre-killed foods. They have very strong feeding response, more like monitors than ball pythons. So I get it that there are people out there who believe it's completely necessary. But when it comes to our situation, our unique situation, it just isn't. And again, this is not a video made to tell you why you need to switch your animals over from live prey. I'm just telling you why I don't feed live prey. Well, the second reason is going to be that it's cruel to predator and prey. So there's a lot of people out there that say live feeding is what nature intended and that it's only natural for your reptile to want to hunt and kill. So there is nothing natural about dropping a domestically bred rodent into a 40-gallon breeder so that when it is curious and goes to investigate the reptile that it's been dropped in the cage with, it is struck and subsequently killed seconds later. Now, there are a lot of people out there that argue, snake or monitor, it needs to be able to hunt. If you've ever actually watched a live feeding of a domestic rodent, there is no hunt. There's only the kill part. Now, if rodents were to give chase or run away, fight back in any meaningful way, maybe I'd change my opinion on that. Probably not, but at least I'd say you have an argument for the mental stimulation side of it. There's basically no mental stimulation that a snake gains from striking and constricting a rodent. As a matter of fact, when I feed frozen thawed prey to my snakes, they actually do go ahead and constrict it when the prey is presented to them. And the reason for that is because through heating it up and moving the prey around, they actually believe that the rodent I'm holding in front of them is live. Same thing with monitors. You can do a lot more with a frozen thawed meal when it comes to exercise and mental stimulation than you can with live. You can make them chase it, like in the video that we'll put in, we'll put a card in here. You can make your monitors chase their food. You can actually do like sort of tug of war. You got to be careful with that because, you might end up with a ripped in half prey item, which is pretty gross. But same thing when your snakes constrict it, you can actually wiggle the prey around so that they feel like they're fighting it. If that's what you really feel, you want your snakes to have exercise and mental stimulation. Go ahead and make the frozen thawed prey move. You can make it fight back for 10 minutes if you want to. So, in my opinion, it's not only that the mental stimulation they gain from live feeding isn't that great, it's that it doesn't hold a candle to the mental stimulation you can actually give them when you are using frozen thawed food. There's also the injury aspect, and that especially applies to monitors. When it comes to snakes, if they constrict effectively and they land on their first strike, there's not so much of a risk to the snake. Still some, because if they constrict improperly, which I've seen happen many times, the rodent can chomp down and leave scars and, pretty nasty injuries if they catch the right area and rip some skin up. With monitors, it's even worse because if you're feeding them a relatively large rodent, they are not being constricted and they're going to have direct access to your monitor's face and eyes, which can result in your monitor being badly maimed. So there's a lot to consider, and in my opinion, just too many drawbacks to consider the, mental stimulation or hunting side of feeding live rodents to my reptiles. There's also the fact that rodents, much like us, have a very complex nervous system. Now, you might say it's a bit hypocritical because, I feed live invertebrates to my reptiles, the insectivores particularly, but I also use live crawfish from time to time for my savanna monitor. And the difference that I see is that invertebrates actually do fight for their lives. You drop them in front of a predator, they run away, they dig, they hide. My savanna monitor actually spends much of her day foraging for food. There is quite a benefit to using live invertebrates where it does actually cause her to hunt and forage, whereas with rodents, like I said before, there is no hunt. And in many places, such as Australia and the United Kingdom, it's actually illegal to feed live vertebrate prey because it is recognized that these animals are capable of complex feelings of, terror and pain. When it comes to rats, they're actually used in studies related to human health because their organ systems are considered quite similar to ours. So when it comes to the cruelty aspect of it, there are just too many good reasons for me to say, no, it's not worth whatever slight benefit might be gained from feeding live prey to my reptiles. Last but not least, in my 3 reasons for saying that feeding live rodents to reptiles, last but not least, in my 3 reasons for not feeding live rodents to reptiles, is purely the convenience aspect of it. When it comes to feeding reptiles with live prey, you're talking about having to keep live rodents on hand for potentially long periods of time, especially if you have a non-feeding ball python or another animal that won't eat, or if you have a large collection, you have to purchase large amounts of live reptiles or live rodents, large amounts of live rodents at a time. Now you may say, oh, you breed rodents, so how can you say that it's inconvenient? And I do breed rodents, and it is inconvenient. It's a huge hassle. It takes up more time than caring for ball pythons, as a matter of fact. And what I do to make it a bit easier is when rodents reach the appropriate size, if they're being used as feeders, not breeders, they're put down and put in the freezer. It's a lot easier to care for them when they're in the freezer than it is when they're in a cage and they need to be fed and watered and cleaned. Now, if you are purchasing your rodents, that benefit is increased tenfold because you can actually just purchase up to a year's worth of rodents at a time if your freezer space allows. So you're dealing with, No feedings, no cleanings, no waterings. You just thaw a rodent, and you don't have to go to the store or a breeder every time you're ready to feed your collection. You simply walk to the freezer, get your items thawed, you heat them up, and present them to their respective, animals. And one thing that people bring up is that there's a lot of waste involved because they'll thaw a rodent out and then say their snake doesn't eat it, so they end up throwing it away. One thing you can do to mitigate this, and this is a tip that I got from Balls to You. Gavin over at Balls to You, he's a ball python breeder in the UK and really a pro. I definitely suggest you check him out. The tip that he gives for minimizing your waste is feed your animals on 2 separate consecutive days. So say make Tuesday and Wednesday feeding day. So that way you thaw out all these rodents on Tuesday and you go to feed them off and somebody refuses their prey, well, you can go ahead and feed it to somebody that was scheduled to eat on Wednesday. And now you've got it set up so that you're wasting very little food. You're not having to throw away these thawed prey items after a snake refuses them. And if you have a large enough collection, you can pretty much do this seamlessly, where you're not going to be wasting any prey. It's going to be an absolute world of difference in the convenience of dealing with frozen thawed animals versus live. I know that we've already covered 3 reasons, but this is going to sort of serve as some bonus content. If you guys are familiar with a YouTube channel known as the Reptile channel, they post themselves as an educational channel, and they show a lot of live feedings and graphic feedings. They are actually sort of a reboot of a vorophilia channel from the dark web, where basically these people get a sexual thrill from seeing reptiles swallow live and pre-killed creatures whole. They actually make reptile hobbyists look like monsters and sadistic, people who enjoy seeing cute animals consumed alive. New England Reptile distributor has a whole, like an expose on that channel and, their sort of deal. And basically, in my opinion, when you feed live, especially when you broadcast publicly, videos of live feedings and things of that nature, it is damaging for the hobby because, reptiles are already sort of a controversial subject. There are still a lot of people out there with the mentality of the only good snake is a dead snake. And when we show our animals not for what they are, which is beautiful, majestic creatures, but when we show them for what some people try to manipulate them into being, which is, destructive, killing machines, and cold-blooded, just nasty, sadistic animals. When we show them for that, we take our hobby backwards to where reptile keeping is a fringe hobby for people who are extreme. That's not what any reptile keeper should want. As long as there are people out there who kill snakes just for being snakes, we should strive to show these animals for the beautiful, majestic creatures they are, and not this sort of like monstrosity that people try to paint them out to be. So guys, if you've got an opinion on this, whether it's for or against what I'm saying, feel free to leave it in the comments. Now, I'm going to tell you in advance, it's probably not going to change my mind. I've heard it all before. I've been reading about, live versus pre-killed prey for probably the past 12 to 15 years. So chances are the opinion you have is an opinion I've read before. But go ahead. I do want to hear it, and it's good to create logical discord. So all comments will be responded to as long as they're respectful. Also, please, if you're not already subscribed, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Got tons of projects coming up, all sorts of stuff to unveil, some giveaways that we're hoping to put together. So lots of exciting stuff in the future for this channel. And go ahead and smash that like button. We appreciate you guys a lot and hope you're having a good one. Thanks.